Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Derek Rowland. I'm the Deputy Chief of Staff to the Honourable Lisa MacLeod, Ontario's Minister of Heritage, Sport, Tourism and Culture Industries. And I get the pleasure of being your moderator this afternoon for our 6th regional webinar outlining the government's supports as a result of COVID-19. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our introductory speakers for some brief remarks before we get into the formal presentation. Minister Smith, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks very much, and good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for joining us on this important update with Minister MacLeod and Heritage, Sport, Tourism and Culture Industries. I have to commend Minister MacLeod for the work that she's been doing and making sure that stakeholders within her sector know the challenges, that she's aware of the challenges that you're facing, but also the various programs that are out there for you to consider. I'm the MPP for Bay of Quinte, so the Belleville, Quinte West and Prince Edward County region. And of course, tourism and sport and heritage are all important in my neck of the woods. So we understand how challenging it has been for you. That's why in collaboration with the federal government, we've been working to ensure that we can have as many supports covering as many possible areas as we can out there for you to access. So it's my pleasure to join you here this afternoon. I know our cabinet is busy, and we do have a cabinet meeting today as well as we continue to bring programs forward and also deal with the ongoing COVID-19 outbreak in our province. So thanks to Minister MacLeod for all the work that she's been doing, and my colleagues from East Region who are here as well. Appreciate their efforts as well. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Minister, and I'll turn it over to MPP Kramp.
Well, thank you very much, and I'd like to echo Minister Smith's comments. Minister MacLeod, you, more than maybe anybody, recognizes the dramatic need for programs and assistance in our entire Eastern region. We're a community of, or a number of communities actually, of small business, tourism, hospitality. I know my rating reaches from Kingston to Algonquin Park, and that's the predominant nature of a lot of the people who have been tremendously adversely affected by the COVID situation. Knowing that help was necessary and needed, any and all vehicles, I know you and your entire staff have worked overtime to try to provide us with some form of assistance that our local people can gather into. I know my colleagues all on the line here as well too today, McDonell, Smith, and that have all been tremendous assets and working with everybody as a team approach here. So I'm looking forward to hearing from a number of our guests that are here today, and or if that is not the availability given the time restriction that we all have. I know Minister MacLeod certainly is going to go through and our staff will go through the means of assistance that you would all basically be able to take advantage of. So please pay attention and help is on the way, and that's what we're aiming to try to do for you here today. Thanks for everybody for attending.
Thank you, MPP Kramp, and I'll turn it over to MPP McDonell.
Well, I want to thank Minister MacLeod for hosting this today. I think it's a great opportunity for our heritage and culture to learn just what's going on. It's so important. I know in our region, which is basically Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry, we just had the cancellation of our Highland Games, Glengarry Highland Games, which is our largest festival, and just highlights some of the challenges going forward. Not only were they canceled last year, but this is the current conditions where our groups are trying to figure out just what this year means and what they'll have to do. So thank Mr. MacLeod, and she's been working at this hard at this since the beginning and trying to get programs out and funding them through the cabinet. So listen and we'll and learn from the activities today.
Thank you, MPP McDonell. Now we've also had another member join us. So we have Minister Steve Clark. Minister, would you like to say a few introductory remarks? You're just on mute.
Mute. There you go. Yeah, so I guess I had the wrong link. So I was on. I could see you guys. You guys look great on the screen. So just really appreciate the and you sounded good. I didn't see myself. So, anyways, I'm here with the world famous Thousand Islands in the backdrop, and as the MPP for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, and Rideau Lakes, I just want to thank Minister MacLeod for her tremendous leadership. And tremendous engagement with my constituents throughout the pandemic. She has always been there for the people of Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, and Rideau Lakes, and just again want to thank her for giving me this opportunity to bring greetings to all of you and just look forward to the presentation. So thank you.
We'll turn it over to the minister.
All right, I want to say thanks to Ministers Smith and Clark, two of my closest colleagues at Queen's Park, as well as MPP McDonell and MPP Kramp, great people. I think we have a strong team in Eastern Ontario and Ottawa, and so I'm just delighted to be here today. Obviously, the communities that you all represent are amazing tourism entities for the province of Ontario, but you also have a great degree of support for sport and culture, as well as being some of the most significant heritage locations in the entire country. And so it's not lost on me the requirement that we need to step up, be there with you, provide those levels of support. So I want to say thanks to each of my cabinet and caucus colleagues for their tremendous leadership at this time. I just wanted to reiterate, we have been hit first, hardest, and will take the longest to recover in the economy. We often will talk about the economy in my ministry as a V, which most sectors took a sharp decline, but they'll end up being able to gradually return. In our sectors, we're more like an L, a rapid decline and a long, slow recovery. And so that's going to be a big challenge for our sectors, which is why we wanted to make sure that we were working with each one of the regions to let them know what types of supports we have in place. So the webinar today will start off with officials from the Ministry of Heritage, Sport, Tourism and Culture Industries to talk about the current restrictions, but also will then eventually talk about two major initiatives that we'll be launching imminently. The first would be an additional $100 million that is going toward the Ontario Trillium Foundation to support community efforts, sports, recreation, culture, and tourism. And the second is $25 million in additional investments to the Ontario Arts Council. 24 million of that, which will go to core cultural institutions across the province that have created a cultural fabric for our province, but also has created an economic development opportunity. And we will reserve $1 million for our artists. So they'll talk a little bit about that. We'll then shift gears. The Ministry of Finance will walk you through three programs that small businesses can access in cultural institutions, which will be the up to $20,000 small business grant, the $1,000 Main Street grant for PPE, and of course the property tax and energy bill rebates. From there, the Ministry of Government and Communities, the Government and Consumer Services will walk you through a demonstration of the portal and how to actually make these applications so that they're in the hands of the government and we can get money into your pockets as quickly as possible. So with that, I just wanted to say thank you. We will be taking questions throughout, so please use the chat box below, or you can alternatively email minister.mcleod@ontario.ca. Some of these questions that you may have may be for a different ministry. So if you prefer to go to minister.mcleod@ontario.ca, we can refer it to the appropriate minister and get you a response. So wanted to be part of this. I'm grateful that my colleagues were able to join. I am going to pop briefly onto my cabinet meeting. I'll be back at the end. I wish you all much success and I wish you all to stay safe. And I'll turn it over to you, Derek, so that our officials can walk through some of the supports that we have in place within the ministry. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you to the MP colleagues who joined us as well for your introductory remarks. Before we begin, I'd just like to note for everyone's benefit that we are recording today's session, and following today's presentation, you will receive a link to view the presentation. So if you happen to miss anything or you're not taking notes, it will all be available after the fact, as well as all the links to apply for these individual funds that are discussed. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to representatives in our ministry. First to kick off is Tony Marzotto, who's a director within our tourism division, to outline the current public health restrictions that are in place as a result of the province-wide lockdown, which is important to understand as the eligibility requirements actually fit into some of the other grant programs that will be discussed later by the Ministry of Finance. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Tony.
Thank you, Derek. Good afternoon, Ministers McLeod, Smith and Clark, and MPPs Kramp and McDonell. Good afternoon to everyone joining us. I'm Tony Marzotto, the Director of Tourism Policy and Research in the Ministry, and I'll be walking through province-wide shutdown measures for tourism, heritage, and cultural businesses. I'm joined by Neil Coburn, who will go through sport and recreation businesses. We will outline the businesses permitted to open and sector-specific restrictions during the province-wide shutdown, including the additional restrictions and measures in place since January the 12th. In terms of impact on specific types of businesses, I'll walk through these slides quickly as it's known to many of you already. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. For meeting and event spaces, they are only permitted to open for specific purposes, including the operation of childcare centers and authorized programs, court services, government services, mental health and addiction support services to a maximum of 10 people, such as Alcoholics Anonymous, social services, or collective bargaining, so long as no more than 10 people are permitted to occupy the rented space. Recording of contact information is required except for court services purposes. For short-term rentals, including cottages and cabins, these are only to be provided to individuals who are in need of housing. Previously made reservations for short-term rental accommodations will be permitted only if the individual is in need of housing. Ice fishing huts may only be rented for day use and for use by members of the same household, with limited exceptions. Of course, the conditions to rent out an ice fishing hut do not apply if it's for the purpose of exercising an Aboriginal or treaty right. For restaurants, bars, and other food or drink establishments, they're closed for indoor dining, but takeout, drive-through, and delivery are permitted, including the sale of alcohol. Next slide, please. Hotels, motels, lodges, cabins, cottage resorts, and other shared rental accommodations are permitted to open. However, any indoor pools, fitness centers, or other indoor recreational facilities that are part of the operation of these businesses must be closed. Seasonal campgrounds may open for trailers and recreational vehicles used by individuals in need of housing or who are permitted to be there by seasonal contract. There are some requirements, such that campsites only for campsites with electricity, water service, and facilities for sewage disposal may be provided for use, that recreational and other shared facilities, excluding washrooms and showers, must be closed, that other areas of the seasonal campground must be closed to the general public and must only be open for the purpose of preparing the seasonal campground for reopening. For creative and media industries, sound recording, production, publishing, and distribution businesses are permitted to open. Commercial film and television production, including supporting activities, are allowed to open. However, no studio audiences are permitted to be on the film or television set. The film or television set may be located in any business or place, including any business or place that is otherwise required to be closed. No more than 10 performers may be permitted to be on the film or television set. The set must be configured and operated in a way to enable people to maintain a physical distance of at least 2 meters from other persons, except when necessary for the filming of the film or television production. Persons who provide hair or makeup services must wear appropriate PPE. And if there is any musical performance, singers and players of brass or wind instruments must be separated from any other performers by plexiglass or some other impermeable barrier. Film and television post-production, visual effects, and animation studios are permitted to open. Book and periodical production, publishing and distribution businesses are permitted to open. Commercial and industrial photography are allowed to operate. However, retail studios are not permitted to open. Interactive digital media businesses are permitted to open. This includes computer system software application developers and publishers, and video game developers and publishers. Next slide, please. Concert venues, theaters, and cinemas, including drive-in and drive-through events, are closed for all purposes, including rehearsal or performing a recorded or broadcast concert or performance. Libraries may only open for contactless curbside pickup and return or delivery. If materials are circulating and are returned to the library, they need to be disinfected or quarantined for an appropriate period of time before they're recirculated. Libraries may also open for permitted services such as childcare services, mental health and addiction support services, and provision of social services. The recording of contact information is required in these cases. Museums and cultural amenities are closed. Horse racing, only training is permitted, no races or no members of the public. And for nightclubs and strip clubs, they're only permitted to operate as a restaurant, subject to the conditions that apply to food and drink establishments. Next slide, please. Zoos and aquariums are closed to the public, but are permitted to operate for the care of animals. Amusement and water parks remain closed, and tour and guide services are closed. I'll turn it over now to my colleague Neil, who will talk about sport and recreational sector businesses.
Thank you, Tony. Businesses permitted to open under the province-wide shutdown and specific restrictions on the sport and recreation sector include the closure of all indoor and outdoor sport and recreation facilities, except for facilities operated for the sole use of high-performance athletes training and competing for the next Olympic and Paralympic Games. 7 professional leagues that can return to play in the facilities that they operate with a plan approved by the Chief Medical Officer of Health. At this time, only the National Hockey League has been given approval to return to play. Community centers and multi-purpose facilities open for the purposes of providing childcare, mental health and addiction services, and social services with a capacity limit of 10 people. Outdoor recreational amenities. So no person is permitted to use an indoor or outdoor recreational amenity that is required to be closed. Outdoor recreational amenities permitted to be open subject to conditions include parks and recreation areas, baseball diamonds, batting cages, soccer, football and sport fields, tennis courts, basketball courts, BMX and skate parks, frisbee golf locations, cycling tracks and bike trails, horse riding facilities, shooting ranges, ice rinks, tobogganing hills, snowmobile, cross-country, dog sledding, ice skating, and snowshoe trails, playgrounds, and portions of parks and recreation areas containing outdoor fitness equipment. On the subsequent side, there are some public health and work safety measures that need to be adhered to when using these facilities. Next slide, please. So for outdoor recreational amenities, the ones that are permitted to be open can only be opened if the people using the facility maintain a physical distance of at least 2 meters from each other, excluding members of the same household. Team sports or other sports or games where people will come in contact of less than 2 meters from each other are not to be practiced or played. So for an outdoor ice rink, while you can do pleasure skating, you're not allowed to play shinny hockey. Any locker rooms, change rooms, showers, and clubhouses are to remain closed, except for the extent that they are required to provide access to equipment storage, a washroom, or a portion of the amenity that's being used to provide first aid. I'll turn it back over to Tony to talk about some sector supports.
Thanks, Neil. I'm going to take you through 2 sources of additional funding that the Minister McLeod referenced at the start of the webinar, available for tourism, cultural, and sport organizations. First, I want to walk you through the Community Building Fund. As announced in the November budget, the province is investing $100 million over 2 years to develop a community building fund that supports community tourism, cultural, and sport organizations, which are experiencing significant financial pressures due to the pandemic. Funding support would be available to not-for-profit organizations and municipalities, and the program will be delivered by the Ontario Trillium Foundation with 2 streams. A first stream that will support local community tourism, heritage, and culture not-for-profits, such as community museums, local theaters, fairs, and cultural institutions, to help sustain their operations in the short term and create new attractions, experiences, and events. And a second stream of funding for municipalities and not-for-profit sport and recreational organizations to make investments in infrastructure rehabilitation and renovation in order to meet public health protocols and local community needs. Ontario Trillium Foundation has been selected as the program delivery agent, as they are well positioned to deliver this funding program. They have strong relationships with sector stakeholders, and they've experienced delivering grants on behalf of the government in a timely manner. They have very robust systems in place for processing and evaluating funding applications and for tracking and reporting on results. We are just finalizing details of this fund, and you'll see more information coming soon. Next slide, please. Also announced in the November budget was emergency support for core arts organizations. The government, and as announced in the budget, is providing one-time emergency funding of $25 million for Ontario's arts institutions to help cover operating losses incurred as a result of COVID-19. This funding will help these organizations remain solvent and prepare for a time when they can fully reopen their facilities, resume full programming, and welcome back their visitors and audiences. The Ontario Arts Council has been selected as the program delivery agent based on their expertise and their history of funding Ontario's core arts organizations. The agency has very good systems in place for processing and evaluating funding applications and for tracking and reporting results. Once again, the program details are being finalized and further details will be available shortly. As you can see, a lot of work is being done behind the scenes to develop these programs to support the sector. I'll now turn it back over to Derek.
Thanks so much, Tony. Neil, I appreciate you walking us through all that material, including the restrictions, but also the upcoming supports that'll be available through the Community Building Fund, as well as the core emergency arts supports. As you mentioned, those details are just being finalized, but I look forward to rolling those out imminently. Before we go to our next speaker, I just want to remind everyone that if you do have a question, you can use the Q&A box below or send a note directly to us at minister.mcleod@ontario.ca. Of course, we do have representatives on the call with us today from our ministry who will do our best to answer in a timely manner. But of course, some of these programs are being administered through the Ministry of Finance, as well as the Ministry of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade. And so if we don't have the answer, we'll be sure to put you in touch with those who do. But with that, and without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Tim Sherman, who's an Assistant Deputy Minister in the Ministry of Finance, to walk us through the Small Business Support Grant. Tim, over to you.
Thank you for that. So it's going to provide a kind of a high-level overview of the grant and hopefully be a helpful scene setter before folks take you through the detail of the portal. So turning to slide 2, government announced the move to a broader province-wide shutdown on December the 21st, and at the same time announced that it would be introducing a new Ontario Small Business Support Grant in recognition of the impact that the shutdown would have on Ontario small businesses. It's worth noting that this new grant is over and above other existing programs that the province has put in place, such as the property tax and energy rebates, or the support that's available to businesses through many federal programs. So the new grant will provide a minimum of $10,000 and up to $20,000 for eligible small businesses that are expected to experience a minimum of a 20% decline in revenue. So every small business will be able to use the support to navigate the challenging times and whatever makes the most sense for them. I think all of you on this call will have a much better sense of some of the ways in which businesses will be able to use this support. And there are 3 basic eligibility requirements on the bottom of the slide, which are probably a helpful framework to use when thinking about eligibility for the program. So first, the business needs to be either closed or significantly restricted by the provincial shutdown. And we have a list of businesses or categories of businesses that meet that eligibility later on in my deck. And the portal, of course, and the application will make that clear. Second, this is targeted at small businesses. And so the definition that is being used for this program is common in other contexts. And it's having less than 100 employees. So basically between 0 and 99 employees at the enterprise level. And finally, the business needs to be able to demonstrate that it will experience a minimum of 20% revenue decline as a result of the shutdown. The primary way that this will be measured is by comparing April 2020 with April 2019 monthly revenue. But there are alternate measurements in place for businesses who were maybe established outside this window. And we also have a slide to show you what some of those comparative points will be. And of course, applications for the new program opened today. So the portal that folks will take you through is now available for applications. Next slide, please. So there's just a couple of examples on this slide, which we thought might be helpful to take folks through so you can kind of understand how those parameters that I just walked through sort of tangibly work their way through the program. So we have kind of 2 companies, Company A, Company B on the bottom of the slide there. And I think we just assume that both these companies meet the business eligibility test in terms of being shut down or significantly restricted. And if you look at Company A on the left, So you'll see that it says there it'll experience a monthly loss of $20,000, which is equivalent in their context to a 25% decline in revenue. So that means they meet the 20% revenue test, and they will be eligible for a $20,000 grant, which is also the maximum, but it fully offsets the revenue decline that's been presented by the company. And then on the right, there's a monthly loss of $15,000, which is also 20%. So they meet the 20% threshold for the decline, and that entire amount, $15,000, would be funded. So turning to slide 4 to talk a little bit about the revenue comparators. So as I mentioned before, businesses that perhaps were not in operation in April 2019 will still be able to calculate a revenue decline using various alternative revenue decline comparators. And the goal here is to make sure that all small businesses will be able to be eligible to apply for the grant. As you see, the chart on this slide shows the different comparators. So I think one thing you'll notice when you look at the comparators is what the program is trying to capture is 2 points in time, one where the business would have been kind of in normal operations versus when they would have been experiencing some kind of public health restriction. So for example, if you look at the second row in the chart, this is for a small business that went into operation after April 2019, and so as a result couldn't use that more general comparator. So sometime between May 2019 and January 2020, the revenue comparator that they would use is February 2020 and April 2020. And when you think back, February was sort of a pre-pandemic, pre-lockdown, provincial lockdown month, whereas April, the province was in a lockdown scenario. And so as a result, it's meant to be a good representation of the impact that that business would have been experienced in the current provincial shutdown. And then just a note at the bottom of the slide, winter seasonal businesses will also be permitted to apply, and there's an alternative revenue decline comparator of they can choose between December 2019 and December 2020 or January 2020 and December 2020, and that's just a recognition that winter seasonal businesses may have a different rhythm and cadence to their business, and so we're providing some flexibility for those businesses here. All right, and then slide 5 provides the list of eligible small business types. So these are ones that are subject to closures or significant restrictions under the current shutdown. As we mentioned, this is sort of the first test that businesses need to meet as part of the application process. And if they meet this plus the revenue test, they will be able to receive a minimum of $10,000 and up to $20,000. For the period of the provincial shutdown, I just wanted to note that this is also the list of businesses that will be eligible for the for the property tax and energy rebate. So I know we're focusing on this program, but it's just another reminder that there are other support programs in place for businesses. So if they don't meet some of the other tests, for example, around revenue for employees, there are these other rebates that we could also apply for. And it's all in the same portal, which makes it much easier for businesses to be able to enter that information. And then the footnote on the bottom there, just to be clear that there are businesses that are not eligible. And those include those that were already required to close prior to the introduction of the modified stage 2 measures in October. So that's kind of the starting point for determining business eligibility. And then of course, any essential businesses that are permitted to operate either within capacity restrictions or otherwise deemed essential are not eligible for the program. So this is the final slide, and hopefully that gives you a good snapshot of program parameters and eligibility. And I will turn it over to I guess it's folks to take you through the portal itself.
Great, thank you very much, Tim. Appreciate you walking us through the finer details of that grant. For some of you who may have joined us previously before the holidays, we did present this grant so that everyone knew that it would become available. And now, as the finer details have been confirmed as well as rolled out, we are now accepting application intakes. So I encourage everyone to take advantage of that. But next up, I'm going to turn it over to Manish Agarwal, who's with the Ministry of Government and Consumer Services, to outline exactly how you can apply and take advantage of those supports, as well as a few others, including the Digital Main Street Fund, PPE support, and the energy rebates. So with that, I'll turn it over to Manish to walk us through the TPON portal.
So I've heard about this new program, and I come to Ontario.ca with a beautiful background. Here, I click on English, and I see the link where it says support we are providing for small business. I want to know, as a small business, what kind of support I'm getting from the Government of Ontario. I click on this link, which takes me to a page with all details about the different programs that the Government of Ontario is having for in support of small businesses. I see here that there's a new program. I click on it, and it takes me to the page where it provides me the list of the programs that are currently available: Ontario Small Business Support Grant, Ontario Main Street Relief Grant, PP support, property tax, energy cost rebates, and what you need to apply. So the program information, what the program is, what I will get as a small business, what are the eligibility criteria, and information about the other programs as well. So I decide to apply for the Ontario Small Business Support Grant because I meet the eligibility criteria. I'll click on apply for funding. Now, when I click for apply for funding, I'm going to show you the test page because I don't want to overwhelm the live system. So it brings me to a page like this. So what you have here is that get help button, which allows me to get help from the contact center or get access to the program information guide. If I want to apply in French, I can switch to French as well. If I've already applied for the other programs, I don't need to start a new application. I can resume the application, or if I've saved the application for draft because I didn't add all the information, I can continue with the same application. Or I can apply for funding. I can start with a new application. So given that I'm a new applicant, I'm going to click on apply for funding. And it brings me to this page where I need to check the eligibility, if I can apply for these programs or not. By default, the new program is selected. I can select multiple programs if I'm interested, or I can just apply for that program. Click on check eligibility, which will again take me to a series of questions to check my eligibility for the program. The first question for the Small Business Support Grant program is, was my business required to close temporarily or significantly restrict services as a result of being subject to province-wide shutdown? I will say yes. Does your business have less than 100 employees? That's the definition for a small business. You can say yes. And is my business expecting at least a 20% revenue decline? I have a handy reference to the business guide that I can access if I want to know more information about what revenue decline means. I'll say yes, and then I click on next. Now it says that I'm eligible for the following funding program, the Ontario Small Business Grant. I'm going to start my application. Now, when I start my application, it takes me to a series of steps. It's going to ask me to provide my business information, my contact information, information related to the new Ontario Small Business Support Grant, then review all the information I provided in the 3 steps, provide my banking information, and submit. So I come here, I provide my legal name. So I'm running a small business, Olivia's Tea Room, so I provide information. I run it as Store of Happiness. And I provide my CRA business number. Now, at this stage, I can validate the business number if I'm not sure if my business number is correct or not. If it's correct, I don't need to validate it there. If I don't know where to get the business number, I will provide a handy tip. It can be found on the GST, HST return, or the employer payroll, or T2 corporate tax filing. Now, if I'm a self-proprietor who doesn't have a business number, we also provide a handy link on how to obtain the business number from the CRA website. The next step is to provide the address information. I can use address lookup via postal code, or if I know the address, I can directly key it in. Okay, so I have that. My billing address is same as head office address. If it's different, I can provide that as well. Click on next. Here I'm going to provide my contact information. Nash, last name is Phone number and my email address. Okay, so I've provided information, I've confirmed my email address is that. It's very important to provide the correct email address, validate it again, because that's the address that is being used in terms of sending emails, confirming the receipt of your application, confirming the payment process, and if you have to come back and resume your application. I'm going to confirm that I'm the owner and I have the signing authority for the individual, trust for the business. At this point, I can save a draft, which allows me to come back. If I don't have all the information, I can come back and resume the application. All this information will be saved. I don't have to provide that information again. Click on next. Now here I'm going to provide information very specific to the Ontario Small Business Support Grant. Right up front, we provide the application guide, which the users can review, the applicants can review in case they have more questions or they want to find more about the program. I need to provide my business type, and it's restaurants and bars. Now it asks me if my question is part of an enterprise or an affiliated enterprise. We have a handy tip in terms of what it means, enterprise, or they can refer to the application guide for more information. So my business is not part of an enterprise, so I'm not going to check that. Now here, if I was having a winter seasonal business, like a ski resort or any business that is associated with winter seasonal, I can say yes, and it will ask me a series of questions. If my business was in operation in the current business structure in December 2019, if I say yes, it's going to ask me for my highest monthly revenue, either in December 2019 or January 2020, given that many winter seasonal businesses don't start operating until January. For the purposes of this demo, I'll say no, my business is not a winter seasonal business. Then the next question is, was my business in operation in the current business structure in April 2019? If I say yes, it will ask me to provide number of employees, my revenue in April 2019, my revenue in April 2020. If I say no, it prompts me to provide my business first full month of operation, the month, and based on that, it's going to ask me for the same information in terms of number of employees, what was my revenue, and in February 2020, what was my revenue in April 2020. For the purpose of the demo, again, I'll say yes, it was in business structure in operation in April 2019. The number of employees were 10. The revenue was 10,000 in April 2019. In April 2020, the revenue is 2,000. Then I attest that the information I'm providing is all good. I go through the terms and conditions. I agree. I've provided now information with respect to this program. I'll say next. Now here I can review all the information I've provided, the business information, the contact information, the information related to Ontario Small Business Support Grant. So all the information has been provided. It all looks good. I can go to the next step, which is to provide my banking information. There's a sample check, copy of sample check provided, just in case people want to see where their branch, what their branch number, institution number, and account number is located on the check. So I'll put that in here. And I'll select the institution number. Now there are many banks. We're just not limiting to the top 5. We cover a broad spectrum of banks within the province. And provide the account number. That's it. Then verify that all the information I provided is correct and click on submit. So when I click on submit, again, some terms and conditions. I'll be attesting as Manish Agarwal that all the information I'm providing is true. Agree and submit. So once I do that, my application is submitted, and so it's just a test environment. So it's saying that there's a problem because I've already used the CRA business number. So we have a check as well to ensure that the CRA business number is not used again. There's only one application that can be submitted with that application. But once I click on submit, my application will be submitted, and I'll get a notification saying that your submission, your application has been submitted. Let me quickly share the email with you on how it looks. The business will receive an email similar to this, where it says that you've applied for this program. This is your authorization number, and it's under review. And if it's approved, you will receive a subsequent confirmation email notifying that your payment has been processed. And that it takes around 2 weeks to receive your payment once the application has been approved.
Great. Thank you very much, Manish, for walking us through that presentation. Certainly a lot of detailed information there, but a thorough walkthrough of the application database and exactly how to apply for those supports now that they're available. Want to appreciate everyone for joining us here today. And just a reminder, if you do have any last minute questions, feel free to contact us directly at minister.mcleod@ontario.ca, and we'll do our best to get back to you as soon as we possibly can. But with that, I'll turn it over to Minister McLeod for some closing remarks. Minister.
Thanks very much, Derek, and thanks to all of those who participated today. I know that these have been incredibly, difficult times for many of those organizations that are on the call today. So please continue to reach out to us and to your local MPPs who were on the call earlier today. Always minister.mcleod@ontario.ca. As I mentioned, we do have programs that will be released imminently with respect to the Ontario Trillium Foundation and the Ontario Arts Council. And we will continue to work with our colleagues at Treasury Board and Finance for additional supports for our sectors. So I recognize that these are difficult times. We want to make sure that we're there for you. And I look forward to being there in person, hopefully this summer, and to see you all again. And I know we'll get through this all together. So thank you very much. And we'll talk to you very soon. Have a good day.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good afternoon.